What up, YouTube? This is Skepticus. This is your boy Adam, and we are continuing with my foundational series, which is an atheist reading the Bible. Specifically, we are in Exodus. Just got to the first several chapters in the last video, so we are now at Exodus 4. We're going to get right into it. The only preamble I want to add to today's video is that we're still, of course, in the very early stages of the Bible. All of these stories, to some extent, are foundational texts for Christianity and Judaism. All of these characters and these stories are some that are, most or all of them are such that even non-Christians, probably many of them, have some familiarity with the names of the stories. But the story of Moses, in my humble opinion, was one of the most foundational stories that we were ever introduced to when I was a kid in Sunday school. I don't have any numbers to back this up or any evidence, but I would say that when I was growing up, this was probably seen even more so than stories like Abraham and Joseph and all that, and Isaac. I think that this was the whole story of Moses and Exodus was seen as being core to Christianity. It was seen as being a story that was for all, safe for all, good to tell the kids. It was not seen as having any problematic aspects. So definitely even much nicer than PG-13. And I think that the average Christian, especially those who haven't read this in a while, or maybe even the ones who have read it word for word, would tell you this is a great story and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to be questioned in it. It is an inspirational story. It is God saving, freeing his people. It is God working through in kind of every man in Moses and lifting him up. It's God for the first time laying down his laws in the 10 Commandments. So I think that the average Christian sees this story, even the most cynical Christian probably sees this story as just nothing but a net positive. And yet, as I read it, it's surprising to me how much of it isn't. I'm not telling you how to feel about it, but here we go. You can make your own judgments. So this is Exodus 4. This starts off with, it's called Signs for Moses. Moses answered, picks up right in the middle of him talking to God on the mountain, the burning bush, all of that. Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you?" Now, just to give you quick context, because we're starting a new video here. Remember, this is him talking about not talking to Pharaoh, but first he has to go back and essentially talk to the rest of the Israelites, because he's going to intercede on their behalf to Pharaoh. And I think even God understands that you should really get the buy-in of the Israelites before you do this. And there is a clear fear from Moses that the Israelites, when I go back and speak with them, are not going to believe that I talked to God, that I am doing this on behalf of God, etc. So that's the context, for this conversation. So again, Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you?" Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, I just love that idea, Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake and it turned back into a staff in his hand. "This," said the Lord, "is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you." We should have a drinking game. Every time they say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, drink. I mean, I couldn't really do that because I would be plastered before we could even get through most of these chapters. They would be very short videos and even more incoherent than I already am. But what a great drinking game. Then the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite, whatever. I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it. Moses returns to Egypt. Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive. Jethro said, go, and I wish you well. Now the Lord had said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you, let my son go, so he may worship me. But you refused to let him go, so I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took... Hey guys, I'm getting through this chapter first, but... Okay, I'm sorry. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time, she said, bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. Now, I talked through in the previous video about how when you just take a chapter like this and you read it from beginning to end, and you just kind of get through it, I think a lot of these things don't hit the same way as if you actually carefully think about them, sometimes sentence by sentence or even word by word. So that's why at first I wanted to get through this chapter because I just wanted to at least say, okay, here's the chapter. This is Exodus 4. The truck's rumbling by. This is Exodus 4. But, oh man, we got to talk. First, I want to point out that this opens up with Moses saying, hey, I'm supposed to go talk to the rest of the Israelites, but what if they don't believe me? So what does the Lord do? The Lord gives him evidence, all right? He gives him the snake or the staff that turns into a snake. He gives him the ability to turn the water into blood. He gives him the leprosy thing with his hand, right? That may sound natural, but I want to point out that in any modern Christian setting, the idea that you require proof at all of God, or that anyone talked to God, or that anything spoken by your pastor is anything less than the word of God. I mean, just asking for evidence in a Christian context almost puts you at odds with religion, with Judaism, with Christianity. They will look down upon you. They will scoff. They'll call you cynical and a skeptic, which, yes, of course, I am a skeptic, but they will act as though your request for any type of evidence at all is a character flaw on your part. Christianity specifically will just scoff at any suggestion that you make that, I need to see some proof of this. I need to see this demonstrated for me. And not then, I prayed for my son to get better, and lo and behold, after 6 months of intensive medical treatment, he got better. No, that's not the proof I want. I want to see, show me a miracle, or show me some proof of God. Show me God's works, and not just you pointing at a tree and saying that proves that God is real. No, show me actual evidence. When you bring this up to almost any modern theist, they will try to use your request for evidence. They will try to throw it back at you almost as though the request itself is a sign of some shortcoming in your personality, in your psyche, as if, how dare you actually ask us for evidence? You should just know that our God is the God, and that you should follow the God, and yet you should worship and do everything that is asked by the God. And you shouldn't have to need any more evidence than, hey, there's a book that tells you to do the things that we just told you to do. And yet, in the book, we see where even God understands that, you're going to need some evidence. Like, okay, if God were to act like almost any other Christian that I know, God would have said, you don't need to show them evidence, just tell them to believe. Or, here, I wrote some things down on some papyrus, just show them what's written that says this is true, and that should be evidence enough. I find this to be a delicious contradiction, that Christians will so often fight you about this idea that you should even have the nerve to ask for evidence. And yet, in one of the most foundational stories of the Bible itself, God himself is essentially acknowledging that evidence is needed, and there's nothing wrong with it, and by the way, he'll provide some. If you ever have questions about anything in Christianity, whether you're Christian or whether you're an apostate or what have you, and you ever ask any Christian for some kind of evidence, or you want to see some kind of proof, and they try to turn that against you, just point them back to their own damn book. Point them to Moses. Point them to the fact that their God understood the need for evidence and decided to supply it. Now, I have a problem with the evidence itself, but that's kind of the next point. But at least he didn't just scoff at Moses and say, well, they should know because I wrote it on a stone tablet somewhere, or because someone wrote it on a piece of papyrus. No, he actually gives them evidence. Now, that being said, the evidence kind of sucks. Okay. I know it says that he got the staff and this, the leprosy thing and the blood to water or water to blood thing, and that they showed this to the Israelites, and the Israelites believed. That's great. Of course, we're going to see in later chapters that doesn't sway Pharaoh or the Egyptians. When I read this when I was very young, I thought, well, it just didn't sway them because they're just stubborn and they don't want to understand the word of God, and they don't want, even though they see the miracles, they don't want to believe the miracles because they hate Hebrews and they hate Christians. And I know there wasn't a Christian at that time, but the way I was thinking as a little kid. But then as you get first of all, when you read the text itself, but if you get a little older and research the stuff, you find out that this evidence is flimsy as hell. All right. The snake and the staff thing, this is actually a common trick. It's a parlor trick. I mean, I haven't seen it live, but I've seen video of people doing the same trick. It has to do something, I think they take an actual snake and they can kind of cause it to stiffen up, essentially, and then they can get it to, go back to being itself. The point is that this is not something that's just unique, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe God made that happen. No, this is not that uncommon, especially in this time. And you'll see later on that this flimsy ass evidence doesn't help him much. So it's not very affirming of God that this was the first thing that he gave Moses to be like, yes, this will show them. I mean, and it convinced the Israelites. I guess that's good. But that wasn't really the whole point of this exercise. The point is to convince Pharaoh. And on that point, it failed miserably. And then the whole, put your hand in your cloak. And when it comes out, it will be leprous. And then put it in again. And when it comes out, it'll be fine. Give me something that feels less like a parlor trick than that. I mean, really, look at this. Now it's leprous. Look at this. Now it's not. You feel like maybe someone should do this thing or something, that just seems cheesy. Okay. And the water to blood, I mean, there's some trick there to make it red water, okay? And you can say, no, these aren't tricks, these are God. But I'm just saying, if this is God actually doing these things divinely, then he's choosing to create divine proof that mirrors the parlor tricks of the day. The hell? That's your proof. I mean, okay. Okay. So then, he goes back and forth. The Lord goes back and forth with Moses. Moses clearly is not terribly comfortable, even after he gives him these miracles, the little parlor trick and all this. Okay, that's great. Moses clearly is still nervous, not feeling very confident. The Lord's getting a little ticked off. And finally he says, yo, what about your brother Aaron? Aaron can talk for you. I'll work with you and teach you how to do these things too. But Aaron can speak with you. Basically, Aaron's going to be the front man. He's going to be the PR guy. I'd like to think of it as minus the romance aspect. This is the first example, the first instance of literature of a Cyrano de Bergerac. We're gonna get Aaron to come step in. So good on Aaron. It's our first introduction to Aaron. But this is where I think this whole story starts to become disgusting. Okay? Because he says, hold on a second, I have to find the text on the screen here. In verse 21, the Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. Yes, all the wonders. Ooh, look at this wonder. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. What? Let me read this again. The Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Now, I know when I was young, I didn't really catch that or didn't think of it. If I did, I didn't think much of it. I think before recently, I would have told you that Moses did his shtick. He performed his little tricks. He made his case. He told him what the Lord wants. And every time he told him, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. But that, as we go through the text now, we see it's not just that Pharaoh's heart was hardened. It's that God hardens his heart. And that's when I think this whole thing becomes really insidious. We have a God here who, first of all, had to be reminded in the previous chapters that he even had a covenant to these people in the first place. All right, that's not discomforting at all. He had to be reminded of this. And then when he finally says, okay, I see my people are sad and I have to go help my people and free my people, he comes up with this whole plan to get Moses to come present the case for God. There's another point I'll get to in a minute. Like, why do we even need to go through Moses? But that's another point. But then he tells Moses, I will harden his heart. Like, God is setting up literally this whole obstacle course that will result in the Israelites being suffering more before they are finally free. It will result in scores of innocent Egyptians being slaughtered. And he is doing all this just to ensure that we have to jump through all these hoops, essentially just to prove to everyone what a badass he is. This is God. If God wanted to say, those people are gone, Pharaoh, boom, make it happen. I mean, this is God. He can make that happen, right? But no, he sets up this whole obstacle course that Moses and Aaron and Pharaoh and all the people of Egypt and all the Israelites have to run through in order so that they can finally get to the point where they are freed. And even though God could free them now if he wanted to, he says specifically that I am hardening Pharaoh's heart. Why? So that he can make us all jump through these hoops and prove what a badass he is. That is exactly what's happening here, and I think it's disgusting. And you'll see as we go to the subsequent chapters that this is going to cause misery for everyone. And instead of just working his divine magic and letting the Israelites go free now, he has to make a point of hawing and braying about how he is the God and how he's going to smack everyone down. And why? So that he can show everyone that he is the freaking Lord. This isn't really about the Israelites. You think that the story is about freeing the Israelites, bringing them out of bondage in Egypt. It's not really about that. That is just a vehicle. It's the medium that allows God to show the world, and specifically the Egyptians and the Israelites, what a badass he is. And he would rather make sure that we all know what a badass he is, even if it causes unnecessary death and misery, rather than just to free them now. Keep this in mind. We're not done with this point, but I can only hammer it home so hard right now. So keep this in mind, because it's not going away. This story is going to unfold, and you're going to see exactly. And not only is he telling us right now, I am going to harden Pharaoh's heart, which I guess Moses is kind of meek here. But if I'm Moses, I'm like, dude, why? Why are you going to harden his heart? Don't do that. Don't do that. Make him listen to me. But no, he's going to harden his heart, and then he's going to make him do all this stuff. You'll see. And that's not even the end of the gross of this whole chapter. He goes to this whole thing. He shows Moses, comes to Moses with a burning bush, and he gives him these parlor tricks to that he can use to convince people, or at least some people, of the reality of what's happening here. And he has chosen Moses. I mean, Moses did not volunteer for this. Moses was out walking around. He's at the top of this mountain, and whoo, what do you know? There's a burning bush. And God instigates this entire plan of action. Okay, he instigates the meeting with Moses. He instigates Moses as his primary representative, and then kind of begrudgingly says, fine, Aaron can also be my representative as well. But it was always Moses was the first one. Okay, God came to Moses. This is God's plan. God chose Moses, and then out of nowhere, after he gives him this plan, we get this paragraph which is just mind-blowing. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses. This is after he's already given Moses his plan of what you're going to do. He's already given him the miracle, the staff, and the hand parlor trick and all this stuff. And he's already given him the plan of what we're going to do. And you're going to use Aaron to talk. And he's given him all these details. He said, Pharaoh's going to harden your heart. This is after that. This is verse 24. Randomly, we get this: at a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. What? Where'd that come from? After you make this whole plan with Moses, you got this whole thing set in motion, and then out of nowhere, at a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time she said bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. What the hell is this? What the hell is this? So Zipporah, and it's kind of interesting. It says, she cut off her son's foreskin. I don't know if this means that Zipporah had a child like before she met Moses with another person, although it never mentions that before. So you would think that Moses' son, that her son would be Moses' son, although it's not, it doesn't specifically say that. Although in these times it would be rare that Moses would have, been given Zipporah as a wife and she would already have a kid. That would be a little strange as well. So I'm assuming this is Moses' son. And I do understand that maybe Moses' son was not circumcised because Moses was raised in the Pharaoh's house, in a Pharaonic tradition, an Egyptian tradition. So maybe Moses was not circumcised, although you think his mom would have had probably taken care of that as a Hebrew before she had to give him up and float him down the river. It said she had him for 3 months. So it's possible, that's why Moses' son was not circumcised. I mean, not that I care, but here's the bigger point. Once again, any Christian who wants to tell you that God is omniscient, bullshit. That makes no sense. You're telling me that God set up this whole plan with Moses and was like, here's the staff, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go talk to Pharaoh. You're going to get your brother Aaron involved, all these other things. And all of a sudden, when Moses is traveling, he's at a lodging place, and then Lord comes to kill him because apparently the Lord figured out that Moses Zipporah and or Moses had a son that was uncircumcised. You didn't know that before? That's not omniscience. And if you did know it before, why didn't you bring it up before? Apparently, your only recourse was to come down with this intent to kill him. Where the hell does this even come from? I have to admit, I don't even remember this from when I was a kid. I don't know if in Sunday school they just went right over that, or if we just never read this specific part of it. I don't know. Although, to be fair, I have to say this, that usually when you're a kid, you almost never, at least in the churches we were in, you almost never sit down and just read the chapters, all right? It's always, you got some illustrations that somebody's made for you helpfully. On top of the illustrations, they will pull out verses and chapters. They will pull out the pieces they want you to read. They will basically make the story for you, and they will use it with, they will build it with words from the Bible, of course. But in retrospect, it was probably already heavily groomed, those words. And they probably did not have, in the versions I was reading as a kid, the part about after the plan is set, then Lord just decides to kill Moses. Where did that come from? Oh, because the Lord finally figured out, the so-called omniscient God, yeah, right, finally figured out that, oh, Moses has an uncircumcised son. Time to kill Moses. I rarely say this because I know apologists can come up with anything, but I would love for any believer to justify this crap to me, to tell me how it makes even one iota of sense. First of all, how can you possibly believe that your God is omniscient? If he makes all these plans with Moses, he gives him the implements, he tells him what you're going to do, he tells him to get your brother Aaron involved, and then after the fact, God decides to kill Moses because he's found out there's an uncircumcised kid in the equation. Please tell me how that equates to omniscience. I would love to hear the logistical knots you have to twist your brain into to try to justify that ridiculous crap. Makes no sense. And then even beyond the question of omniscience, I mean, so the punishment for having a son who's uncircumcised is that I'm just going to come down and boom, take him out. That's the God you want to follow? That's your loving God? I know some people will be like, well, that's the Old Testament God. BS. This is the same God. It's the same God that Jesus worshiped. It's the same God who is the Father of Jesus, right? This is your God. After going through all this trouble with the burning bush and everything, and suddenly he just finds out. I don't know if a spy came and told him. I mean, was he just walking around one day and like, wait a minute, I think that kid's uncircumcised. I'm going to go kill Moses. How does that make any sense? And Zipporah's son, like, it doesn't say how old Zipporah's son was, but this makes me just cringe. Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. I mean, and I say this because there's never a good time to cut off your foreskin, but usually the way that most people justify these things is the fact that you circumcise a baby at such a time that, traumatizing as it is, the baby never remembers as it gets older. But if your kid is not a baby, if your kid is a couple years old even, it's going to remember this horrifically. That one day we were at a lodging place traveling to do this stuff that the Lord had told us to do. And then suddenly my mom pulled out a flint knife and cut off my foreskin. This is Exodus 4. One of the most foundational stories in all of the Bible about Moses. All right, let's carry on. I can't deal with that crap anymore. It's pissing me off just thinking about it. This is your loving God. Exodus 5. Bricks without straw. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness. I do think it's interesting here, for all of God's supposed glory, and for all the ways he wants to prove what a badass he is, and he's going to force Pharaoh's hand, he's going to smack everyone down. But how does he start this whole thing? He gets Moses and Aaron to come talk to Pharaoh and start off with a lie. He starts with a lie. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." He doesn't just say, "Let my people go." Often, as this gets retold from the pulpit or from the hymnal, all we get is the "let my people go, let my people go, let my people go." Like that's the only thing being said. But that's not the only thing being said. The first thing he says is, "Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness," which strongly implies that, oh, just let us go do this festival in the wilderness and we'll come back. We want to do Burning Man. We want to go to Burning Man. God says you should let my people go to Burning Man, so let us go. Knowing damn well you ain't coming back. God said this to Moses in the previous chapters. So, God never said, "Yeah, I'm only doing this to try to get you to go to worship me for 3 days. And then if all goes according to plan, we'll send you back to slavery." No, from the beginning, he has presented this as freeing the Israelites. But the way that they tell it to Pharaoh is, "Let my people go, so that they may have a festival." Because the Israelites really need to go to Burning Man this year. I'm not terribly offended by that, because either way, you're trying to get people freed who are in slavery, and they are enslaved to there's no great way to be enslaved, but they're enslaved in under a regime that is reviled by them and treats them like crap. So you could argue whatever they feel like they need to say in order to make this happen is justified. But I do still think it's interesting that the way that they start this is with a lie. Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord of our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." This statement from, I guess it's from Aaron, actually, because it's Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. It doesn't exactly say who's speaking, but you kind of assume it's Aaron, actually, because even though Moses is the center of the story, Aaron is presented as the one who's most articulate. But this statement doesn't make a lot of sense. We already know that the Pharaoh is out of love with his Israelite slaves, that's for sure. He feels like there are far too many of them. He fears that they would turn against him if there was a war or something, and he sees them, understandably so, as a security risk. So while I understand that even in that case, he probably does not want to just let these people go, because that would be embarrassing for him from a power and authority perspective. The idea that he would care if any of them get struck with plagues or with the sword doesn't make any sense. Again, I'll read this again. Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness," which wouldn't be a 3-day journey. They want to get the hell out, but okay. "To offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." And of course, if I'm Pharaoh, I'm like, yeah, let him strike you with plagues and the sword. I don't care. I guess I wouldn't want them to have plagues, because if these are people working amongst you, so their plagues will probably become your plagues. But still, I'm like, if some of your people get sick or they get struck down by the sword because they didn't go to your God's festival, I don't care. It doesn't make any sense that the Pharaoh would care. But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to work. Then Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people. You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out. Let us go and sacrifice to That is why they are crying out. Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for the people, so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies. Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, this is what Pharaoh says. I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all. So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw. And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before? Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, make bricks. Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people. Pharaoh said, lazy, that's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks. The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, you were not to reduce the number of bricks required of you each day. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, may the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. God promises deliverance. Moses returned to the Lord and said, why, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all. This is Exodus 5. Now, I do want to point out here, remember in the previous chapter, I said, we have now started this whole game that is not about freeing the Israelites at all. It is about the Lord jerking himself off. And here's what I mean by this. I mean, we're not done with this, but here is the first tangible example of this. God could free them right now. At least if we are to believe all the edicts of Christians and Jews, that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, although, again, the omniscient part clearly is BS. But if he really is all-powerful, he could free them now. We saw where he actually caused the previous Pharaoh to really drastically change his plans by giving him dreams. Did he try that this time? I mean, if he did, he didn't tell us. It's not in the book. And he even tells us specifically that he will harden the Pharaoh's heart. In other words, God doesn't want this to be quick and easy. God wants this to be drawn out so that he can make a spectacle to prove to everyone what a badass he is. And this is the first tangible result of that. He could free them now, but he hasn't and he won't. And as a result of that, what is going to happen? Of course, the Israelites will be made more miserable because you're pissing the Pharaoh off. Clearly, it's proving that there is a lot of Israelites around because he's saying, go make brick without straw, which if you really wanted them to be productive as slaves, you would give them at least the materials that they needed to make as much of the material every day that they of the construction every day that they had to make. But apparently, whatever projects they're working on are not so pressing that it's not more important to Pharaoh just to punish them and to piss them off, even if it means they don't make as many bricks every day, because you can't make the bricks without straw. And yet he tells them you got to make the bricks and you just got to go find your own straw. And that's gotta suck. It said that they had to go out and find stubble, which basically means even, in the farms would have straw, but you can't just walk into a farm and steal their straw. So you had to just scrape up what little bits of straw stubble you could find in order to try to use that as aggregate for your bricks. And of course, again, if the primary objective was to get the slaves to create some product, you would at least be giving them the things that they needed to make their product, even if you didn't like them. But in this case, because of God's actions, Pharaoh is already starting to get pissed off. And him being pissed off, while it might in the very long term end up in the Israelites being free, in the short term, it's going to end up in them being much more miserable, because the Pharaoh is going to treat them like ass. Yay, God. That is Exodus 5. We are going to go through one more. We are going to get through Exodus 7. Or actually, Exodus 6. So Exodus 6. Then the Lord said to Moses, Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh, because of my mighty hand. His pimp hand is strong. He will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of this country. Because of my mighty hand. Okay. God is talking about his pimp hand being strong. And he's jacking himself off as he does it. God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. Yes, we know. Here we go. Ready to drink? God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. Cheers. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they resided as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I have remembered my covenant. Yeah, you didn't remember it before. I guess you just remembered it now. It's good that you remembered it eventually, after enough people were miserable and had to cry out. I don't know. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from it, but I won't do it right away, because that wouldn't show everyone what a badass I am. So after you guys suffer miserably for a while more, then I will finally take you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians, because look at my pimp hand. It's strong. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. I mean, we kind of know already. You keep telling us over and over and over again. That I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand, smack, smack, to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. Here's the pull string again. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. You will number like the stars. You will number like the dust in the earth. I am the Lord. I am the God of Jacob. I am the God of Isaac. Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and harsh labor. Yeah, I don't blame them. They're already like, dude, screw this. This was already a bad idea. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go out of this country. But Moses said to the Lord, If the Israelites will not listen to me, why would Pharaoh listen to me, since I speak with faltering lips? This is a great point. You can't convince your own damn people, but you still want me to keep going back and talking to Pharaoh again. And now it goes into family record of Moses and Aaron. I don't know why this is here. Like, here we are in the middle of the story. And hey, you know what we need? We need a lineage. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron about the Israelites and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he commanded them to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. I know we just said that. And then it says, these were the heads of their families. I'm not reading all this crap. I don't know why this is stuck in here, what this is supposed to. I know that to some extent, if some people like to follow all these lineages and so begat so-and-so, but it should be like a concordance at the back of the damn book. It's weird the way they just shove it in here at times and places where it actually kind of undercuts the story. And then finally at the end of this chapter, Aaron to speak for Moses. Now when the Lord spoke to Moses in Egypt, he said to him, I am the Lord. Yes, we know. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I tell you. But Moses said to the Lord, since I speak with faltering lips, why would Pharaoh listen to me? We just did this. They said these verses, and then they gave us the lineage out of nowhere. And I guess they figured now that we've junked up this book with this long line of lineages that's just boring and no one wants to read through, I guess we should go back and repeat these verses. Yeah. Or maybe just don't stick this stupid lineage in the middle of here for no apparent reason. So we're going to stop. I mean, I could barge into Exodus 7 here, but that's also going to be a fun discussion. So it's just how gross. I mean, we're seeing this whole pattern now that's starting to evolve, which, and this is the same thing we saw going back as far as the creation story itself with Adam and Eve, that it's God could fix this. God could remove misery. But God is more important and more concerned with playing games. God created us. And if he didn't already know that we were going to want to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then he's not omniscient. If he had any doubt whatsoever that we would do that, he's not omniscient. In fact, he's kind of dumb, because you really know nothing about your own creation then. But he wanted to play this game where he creates the Garden of Eden and, oh, look at this, but here's the tree. Don't eat from that one. Knowing damn well eventually someone's going to eat from that one. And then now it's the fall. And now, oh, Lord forbid we actually know the difference between good and evil. These are games. These are games that are for control. These are games for, showing the world what a badass you are. And it's not that was the one and only time we saw God playing games. I mean, telling your most holy dude Abraham, who's already proven to you multiple times in the text that he is your dude, that he believes anything you say, that he follows you no matter what. But after all of that, and after you've already renamed him because he is now basically your dude, your man, and you're like, you will be Abraham, you still felt the need to give him this other test. Hey, go kill your son Isaac. Go sacrifice him to me. Let's go see if he does it. Let's go see if he actually, oh my gosh, he actually did it. He's actually pulling Abraham or Isaac up to go sacrifice him. Angel, quick, go stop him. Go stop him. He's playing his games. He just keeps playing games. And now he's got his whole people, which again, we don't know the actual number, but they have filled Egypt, whatever that number is. There are about 1.5 million Egyptians estimated at this time. I don't know how many Hebrews it would take as slaves to fill Egypt, but all these people are suffering under the yoke of the Egyptians. And rather than stop their suffering now, you're going to play more games. You're going to tell Moses that he is going to do all these things and to talk to the Pharaoh, but then you're also going to tell him that I am going to harden Pharaoh's heart. I mean, ultimately, why does Moses even need to act as an interpreter, first of all, to God's own people? They have Moses. He has Moses go back to the Israelites and say, hey, I talked to God, and here's the proof of how I talked to God. See, I have this staff, and I have this little leprosy trick with my hand. I have all these things. Like, why couldn't God have just talked to the Israelites? They're his people, his chosen people. But instead, he had to pick this one person to intercede on his behalf and then do this whole translation game where he's like, yeah, I talked to God. No, trust me. How do you know? Well, because he says, I am I am who I am. And that proves that I talk to God. And oh, look at this staff. It turns into a snake and now it's a staff again. That proves I talk to God. Like, why don't you just go talk to the Israelites yourself? Just talk to them. You're God. Why does Moses and Aaron need to intercede between God and Pharaoh? If God didn't actually want to appear before Pharaoh, we know by the Bible's already given evidence in their stories that he could have spoken to Pharaoh in dreams. And that apparently in the Pharaonic tradition, they believe that. I mean, they're going to follow these dreams. I mean, if that's what it took, then why didn't you do that? But no, we have to create this whole thing where Moses and Aaron are going to talk to Pharaoh and they're going to keep coming with God's message, but then God is going to harden Pharaoh's heart against them so that he's going to force us to go through these iterations over and over again so that each step of the way, God can be like, I am the one. I am who I am, and I'm going to kick that ass. Oh, yeah. I am the God. I am the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, the God of Isaac. Yeah. It just strikes me as a deity who is constantly jerking himself off. Okay, on that apostate note, we're going to close this off because we'll have to wait till the next lovely video installment before we get to Exodus 7. As always, excuse me, thank you for the view. Thank you for following along. Thank you for any comments that you're leaving. Put any discussion about what I'm screwing up, what I've gotten wrong. I'd love to see it. A lot of this, of course, is opinion. I guess you can argue that opinion is usually neither right nor wrong, but I have new things to learn about this stuff every day. As I've said before, as I'm reading this text, it's showing me new stuff every day, and it's not flattering. But please feel free to accentuate my learning in that regard. But I appreciate you tuning in. I thank you for the view. This channel is Skepticus, and I am Adam, and this has been an atheist reading the Bible. Thanks for tuning in.